Hey everyone, welcome and thanks for jumping into today's Akash Weekly Twitter Spaces. I'm Nadia Bajuelo, Community Events Manager here at Overclock Labs. I hope everyone here now or listening in later is having a great morning, afternoon, or evening wherever it is that you're joining us from. With that, let's get started with today's Spaces. First, Greg will take it away for updates. After updates, we'll give you guys a full introduction to our guest, George Jekner, CEO of Yieldmos. I'll be asking George to tell us about Yieldmos as well as his experience with Akash and future plans. We'll then kick off a panel discussion on DeFi and decentralization and Web3 before wrapping up with an AMA with Greg. Our episode today does discuss DeFi, but guys, remember, this is a community call and discussion. It's not financial advice, so as always, do your own research. We'll talk to George just after updates, but right now, let's hand it off to the man of the hour and CEO of Overclock Labs, Greg Osuri. Take it away, Greg.
Thank you, Nadia. Hello, everyone. Before we get into our weekly updates, I want to take a moment to really sympathize with people that lost a lot of money this week. A lot of them are just innocent people. They have not been engaging in any trades. Most of them haven't touched their wallets in months. And woke up yesterday to realize their funds are gone. It's really unfortunate. So there are two major hacks and one possibly related hack. The first one was the Nomad attack, which was a obvious bridge attack. You know, it's one of those another 100 million, almost a $200 million exploit, and this was a little different exploit in the sense that the attacker shared the exploit publicly, and it was some sort of a mob attack that everybody started, exploiting and started withdrawing funds. If you are one of them, I would highly suggest returning the funds if it's not your money and you're doing a service to your fellow kryptonites, And once you steal money, there is no going back. It's sort of like it haunts you for your life. Right? So please return the funds if you exploited the vulnerability. And second big attack happened with our friends at Solana. This seems to be a very sophisticated attack. It's a supply chain attack, we call it. So looks like some of the libraries, primarily on iOS hot wallets, and there's some indication on Android as well, are being hacked. So the attacker was able to inject malicious code within the libraries that these wallets are built, the Phantom wallet on the mobile. None of the cold wallets are affected. That means if your tokens are on a ledger, you're okay. This sort of like emphasizes the importance of having open source software. I'm a big I mean, everything we do at Akash is Overclock Labs is open source for the most part, especially anything that touches funds of users. And the reason for that is you need that open auditability in order for you to be secure. Closed source systems are inherently faulty. And Phantom Wallet, there is this practice in our crypto that all the wallets are closed source, which is very, very frustrating and very insecure. So I hope we take this lesson and open source our own, ecosystem. I feel like Kepler should be able to open source their wallets. I feel like, uh, you know, uh, Cosmos Station, all of them should open source their wallets for better, auditability. This could have been avoided if people researchers especially were aware of the source code that made into these wallets. At least, we help them patch these vulnerabilities, right? So it's really unfortunate. This is a supply chain level attack, and there's another attack that seem to be related. There are about 35,000 repositories on GitHub that were the attackers were inserting malicious code within package updates. So, like NPM packages can run arbitrary code in using hooks for the in the what do you call package JSON, right? Or the one of the configurations. In that in that in that hook, people were able to inject you know data extraction logic to post like sensitive information from one's computer, like information stored in environment files like your keys, your location of the keys, your if your keys are stored as unencrypted on your local desktop, they could be exported out to a URL. If the keys are an environment variable, they could be exported out. There's a lot of like crazy sophisticated attack that's happening, right? So be very, very careful. It's really, I mean, it's not Solana protocol's fault. It's the wallets that are closed source and had very little scrutiny on packages that their developers are importing, and somebody messed up somewhere. So just be very, 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 very like when you're using a hardware wallet, be extra, be a third-party wallet, be extra careful if it's closed source. And always use a hardware wallet. With that, moving on to across Akash ecosystem, as usual, we have been getting pretty decent press, and there's quite a lot of you know uh, articles people are writing. One is Cryptopedias wrote a beautiful piece on talking about closed source. The same vulnerability could be extended to the cloud as well, right? So Amazon Web Services is the number one host for crypto today. It's fully closed source. It's fully opaque. We have no idea what's happening underneath the hood. We have no idea if there's a zero-day attack like what happened recently with Solana wallets. We have no idea if there is a censorship related attack, right? There's so many things that could go wrong in a closed source system, and Web3 relying on the systems is not okay, right? We're just waiting for a bomb to happen, and I don't want to know what happens when 60% of the Ethereum network is attacked because they were vulnerable for a 0 day on Amazon, right? So this article really gets into the importance of a single reliance on a single host, and the reason why we built Akash as a network of different hosts and different providers is to precisely avoid this single point of failure, right? So Akash's design is essentially a distributed cloud that's powered by a global network of providers that deliver value in a non-custodial and permissionless way. The open nature of Akash really enables uh, rapid iteration, right? Rapid iteration by a growing system of developers. Akash is now being developed by several companies, um, uh, you know, uh, that complement Overclock Labs, right? So, and as we get more adoption, as we get more folks, joining the ecosystem, contributing to the growth of Akash network, and having that sort of like visibility and transparency and auditability in the code is very important to build secure systems, right? So this gets into the whole notion of why you should not have a single company have so much power over a decentralized network. And also, we also know the outages, right? Amazon goes down a lot. I mean, last year alone, 2021, they went down 113 times. Before that, in 2022, 124 times, right? I have this open source repo that gets into like how many times Amazon went down, but yet we still seem to embrace it. So that needs to change. And this article really gets into the importance of not relying on a single host. And CoinTelegraph really wrote a beautiful piece on storage market, but they highlighted the fact that the birth of the decentralized cloud market. And the author Rachel Olson gets into how Akash is serving this new decentralized revolution, the computing revolution, and how one of our big users, Presearch, is using Akash, right? It's beautiful to see a use case, and the CEO of Presearch talking about how they like Akash and how their community should embrace this decentralized cloud to empower Presearch. And Presearch is one of the most widely used search engines. They have about 150 million monthly active users. And Presearch running on Akash means those users running on Akash, right? This is an amazing feat of recognition by the CEO of a major, highly usable crypto product, a Web3 product, and talking publicly about how they use Akash. And I have no idea if this was going to happen. The journalists went directly to research. I have no idea. They didn't ask us for introduction. They went directly. And this is the kind of organic press and organic adoption we're looking for. And if you remember, my thesis was like during a bear market, we get less noise and more signal, right? So real fundamentals are showing up. The press is the first one to pick up these fundamentals and talk about them, right? Instead of talking about meme coins or crazy NFT floors or all these exuberant spending or exuberant things that the crypto bull markets create, are being replaced by real value, organic press, organic usage. People are talking about what is fundamentally driving this revolution, right? The infrastructure is delivering, right? So it's very, very important to keep in mind our our activities that we do over the next few months because bull markets will come back, right? The question is, what do we do during this bear market when we have a great opportunity to capture the mind share from the crypto the people that stay in crypto now are the ones that have been in crypto for a long time. We have the tourist class leave during this crash. They'll come back later, but the tourists left, the permanents stood, and those people need to recognize the importance of the decentralized compute, and through press and through these adoption stories is how they find out. So we got to encourage more people to talk about how they're using Akash, especially the press and highly recommend you check it out. And there was also, and if you want to really understand the difference between cloud storage and cloud computing, I highlighted in my last spaces. We posted a link to our Twitter in our Twitter thread to that segment of my last spaces for you to go check it out. Um, and there's a beautiful uh, uh, package of a really cool integration with Terraform. So Terraform, for those of you don't know, Terraform is the number one orchestrator for multi-cloud applications. So Terraform is a software built by HashiCorp. It's one of my favorite softwares. One of the softwares that actually made me learn Go language 7 years ago. It allows you to orchestrate, that means deploy your applications across Amazon or Microsoft or Google in a very simple way. I think it's used by 90% of the cloud orchestrators today. So it's a very popular, very widely used tool. And we have an integration where you can deploy your applications using Terraform onto Akash. This is a very big feat of engineering, right? It's done by a community member. It's not done by a core team member, which is amazing because they felt the need to use Akash as an alternative, if not uh, to siphon some of their infrastructure onto Akash, right? And this is a very important moment because when we go to larger companies, when we ask them to move their infrastructure over to Akash, well, they're going to look at us in a skeptical way because, they're used to Amazon, they're used to a lot of these, cloud infrastructure, and they're invested in them. So that's a big ask. So instead, what we like to do is to convince them to move some of their infrastructure, maybe non-critical infrastructure. Maybe you can move your developer environment or CI/CD pipelines over just to get a taste of Akash first, right? Once you get a taste of Akash, then you can move your other infrastructure. So for us to be able to do that smoothly, you need to be integrated into their systems. So a Terraform integration means they can simply write a small script and they can take small piece of the infrastructure and put it on Akash very, very easily without having to go through like all these learning curves and waste the investments they made in Terraform and all that. So this is a really amazing integration that I'm super excited about. We're going to start seeing more of like bigger use cases, bigger enterprises, slowly siphoning their infrastructure, and we can have our sales team go actively encourage folks to like, hey, use this integration, right? So I'm very, very happy of this integration. And there's a forum post on our forum that talks about how to that talks about this um, this plugin and how to use it, right? So it's still in a development, but it's in a usable way. Um, we have a lot of our amazing community members. We have Pavel, I believe he deployed sign network nodes onto Akash, right? And he's paying $8 a month, which is amazing, right? $8 a month for running a full-fledged validator node is just ridiculously low, right? More people are going to realize that, and things are happening. Every week, somebody is deploying something, right? Alter DApp has tweeted out saying that they're doing quite a lot of projects on Akash, right? Check them out. I think that the Altered app is sort of like the DAO that manages this hyper secret email messaging protocol. I'm really excited to host amazing, highly privacy optimized software in Akash. And we saw, you know, our really good community member Thyborg get into the nature, the security landscape, right? With Nomad and and the Nomad, which is a bridge essentially, and the Harmony Protocols hack as well that happened, I believe last month. If you look at Nomad, I mean these are bridges. We know the bridges are really insecure. Why? Because your funds are being secured by the bridge, right? They're fundamentally one of the reasons why I am hyper bullish on Akash. Just give me 1 second. My dog has learned how to howl, so he's on this new howling pattern. I'm going to put him into a room. My apologies.
Oh, that's no problem. I'm sure we all have something going on in the background. I definitely have two howlers at my house. Always worried the same thing will happen.
He's
Joy.
he's he's obsessed with howling, and yeah, so he's kind of adorable actually. Okay, no more howling now. So going back, so we're talking about like the fundamental difference between why we believe Cosmos IBC is a lot more secure is because the concept of relayers, right? Cosmos in the IBC or the inter blockchain communication protocol in Cosmos is designed about relaying packets from one blockchain to another blockchain. So the assets are not actually secured by the bridge, but rather the bridge or the relayer here just puts packets across, right? Doesn't secure any of the assets. The security of the asset depends on the security of the blockchain that either sends the asset or receives the asset, right? So for example, if I send tokens from Akash to Osmosis, the tokens are first secured by Akash network using the proof of stake scheme, and those tokens are relayed. That means a message is sent using the relayer to Osmosis asking for a transfer of tokens. And after the acknowledgement happens, the tokens get transferred. So there's no sort of like once the relayer is relayed, the relayer can die, right? And the assets are still secure, right? So that fundamentally is a lot better than a bridge. The way I would uh, the way I would like the best analogy I would give between a relayer and a bridge. I mean, a bridge is just like any bridges that we have on planet Earth. You can, you're if you say you're sort of like, you know, going from A to B, and if you're stuck on the bridge and the bridge blows up, you're dead. A relayer is more like the transporter in Star Wars. You relay from one side to another side once, and it's really fast and you're done. You know what I mean? So I think I think that's a decent analogy, but the point is like it's a lot more secure. Now we don't know. We know for sure like this bridge type attacks are not possible on IBC. So I feel as a user a lot more secure. Now that doesn't mean there could be other issues, right? So hopefully there are not going to be any other issues, but ultimately it comes down to a big attack vector I can think about for Cosmos-based systems is the security of the blockchain itself, right? A thing you need to notice is how much of the blockchain uh, a given blockchain is holding in terms of asset value, and how much is their market cap that could secure their asset value. If the TVL is higher than market cap, that means theoretically someone can purchase all the tokens and gain a majority share on a blockchain and attack and basically transfer all the tokens, using this majority voting power, right? So the security really depends, is only secure as much as its market cap, as much as the tokens are locked up. So be very careful on how many tokens are bonded, how many tokens that are circulating are actually bonded, and that's the security of that given blockchain, right? So we're yet to see an attack at that level, right? So far it's been bridge attacks, but we're yet to see an attack where we're going to see a complete proof of stake blockchain take over. Now, is it possible? Is it not possible? I don't know. There's a lot of things that are possible these days, right? So just keep an eye out. And I feel a little safer with Akash because we don't have, third-party smart contract execution risk. We don't secure any assets on chain. We are not a DeFi protocol. Akash really, at the end of the day, is just a coordination protocol. It coordinates a tenant to a provider to transfer assets, right? And so it's a lot safer in terms of like security profile. But some of the other projects that I worry about are like obviously the DeFi projects that we have hosted. Now it's very, very important to keep in mind the security is really a result of the bonded tokens, which is a result of the market cap, right? So that's really the big difference between IBC and bridge-based stuff. With that, we are also concluding. We still have positions open. We closed most of our positions. It's amazing. We had all these amazing folks join the company now. Overclock Labs, I think 8 people joined. Four full time and four contractors over the last month. We still have VP of marketing we're looking for, and we have senior engineers we're hiring. We're always hiring engineers. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. So check out our careers page, akash.network/careers. If you know anybody, please refer them to us. And with that, I can conclude my spaces. I mean, do we get into questions now, Nadia, or?
Oh, we're not concluding the spaces, Greg.
My
Actually, we
apologies.
have
My
plenty
space.
more. We have our guest, George, and then we had our panel discussion and AMAs. We've got questions already. We'll see what we can do here. But for right now, joining us today is George Jekner, CEO at Yieldmos. George is the CEO of Yieldmos, primarily responsible for strategy and back-end development. George has been a crypto enthusiast and a full-stack developer in the traditional finance sector for almost a decade. George was previously an IT consultant in the Chicagoland area for 7 years. Welcome, George. How are you today?
Hi, Nadia. Thank you. I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Oh, we're good. We're good. And Greg's good. His dog, maybe not so much, but hopefully he's feeling a little better now.
Oh, he's good. He was happy howling. He's not sad.
So, George, can you give us a brief overview of what Yieldmos is?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, first of all, and second of all, I just wanted to reiterate what Greg said about feel really bad and sad for all the hacks that have happened recently, and just wanted to echo that if you participated in that, do the right thing and give it back. And Yieldmos is trying to bring to market non-custodial solutions. What does that mean? We are trying to use a module that came out in December called Auth to be able to do things on your behalf. Claim your staking rewards, delegate them, enter pools on Osmosis, and then bond them. We have a couple other strategies that we sort of have planned, and that's sort of the implementation details. But at a high level, we're trying to figure out a way to help people earn yield without having to take custody of their funds.
So, George, can you tell us a little bit more about what that means? What does non-custodial mean? What does that mean for the person and their funds?
Yeah. So what that means is that that your assets, your funds, your tokens stay in your wallet. They don't get moved to our smart contract. They don't get moved to our wallet. We don't take ownership of what's yours. You get to hold on to that ownership. You get to hold on to that custody. And you just delegate certain permissions to us, and we execute those things on your behalf.
Awesome. And you're using Otzi to achieve this. I've seen you explain this using a digital file as an example before, and it's a great analogy. Do you mind sharing with us?
Sure. Yeah. So like if you think about like a Google Doc or a Google Sheet, you can give somebody 3 different permissions usually: viewer only, editor, or owner, right? And with those permissions, they're only able to do the things that are within scope of that permission. If they're a viewer, they're not going to be able to delete the document or edit it, right? If they're an editor, they're not going to be able to delete it, right? The other example that comes to mind that might be a little bit more relevant to crypto is, a check. I hope everybody's familiar with how a check works, how a checking account works, right? You write a check to somebody and you authorize them to draw that much money from you, and not a penny more and not a penny less, right? So that's also sort of something that I think we're all might be familiar with, that sort of already might be using in our day-to-day lives or used to use in our day-to-day lives.
Yeah, definitely. And I still remember checks. Hopefully there's a lot of us that still do. So what makes Yieldmos different from other auto compounders?
Sure. You're probably referring to Restake. We do support every single validator out there, versus with Restake, the validator themselves has to integrate with Restake's stack. We're also branching out to other strategies. Restake currently only supports staking or claiming your staking rewards and restaking them. We also have Osmosis Pool LP compounding in alpha, where we just take the balance it's in your wallet and join the pool and then bond it and then provide a boost in APYs for that. And then we have a few other things on deck as well, being able to move assets in between networks and maybe something with perpetuals and delta neutral type of stuff. But we're definitely expanding beyond what's currently on the market.
And then for those of us with cold wallets, for example, Ledger, when will Ledger support be available?
So Ledger Wallet is not available for anybody that's trying to use Aussie right now because of a bug in the Cosmos SDK. But that actually got fixed in the most recent release of the Cosmos SDK 0.46. Now it's up to each individual network to upgrade to that version, which my understanding is because of all the changes in 4.6 and because of the incompatibility with IBC at the moment, it's going to probably take a little bit of time. So I'd probably expect Cosmos to lead the charge and Cosmos Hub to lead the charge and be the first one, but who knows? I want us to be optimistic and say a couple months, but I don't know. It's really up to each dev team.
Yeah, that makes sense. So George, how did you first hear about Akash?
Oh man, I think back in the last summer of 21, fall of last year, I was on Osmosis and I saw AKT and kind of just went down the rabbit hole of researching what AKT did, how it did it, and I from the beginning it was like the most novel project that I had seen in a long time, and just been impressed with everything that's been happening, and always been in the back of my mind of how I can use Akash and then yeah, but it's been an amazing idea.
Thank you. So what has your experience been with Akash so far, and what are your plans from here?
I think my only experience probably so far has been using it as an end user, as a consumer of various crypto apps that have most front ends running on it, right? We've also started looking at for some of Yieldmos things, but we have some security concerns that we actually want to talk with some people about, and we have an internal tool that we're thinking about moving over. But it's when I hear Greg say things like run a validator node for $8 a month, I mean that captures my attention, and I'm sure it has to capture a lot of other people's attention as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we look forward to having you join the ecosystem. So, guys, there's a popular saying in crypto: "Not your keys, not your crypto or coins." And with in light of the recent news and everything going on, and this conversation, we can also think about it as not your wallet, not your crypto. So we wanted to discuss this idea and the current events with Greg and George, and also joining in on the panel is Scott Huey Hewitson, finance associate here at Overclock Labs. Welcome, Huey.
Hey there.
How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great today. Every day is
Awesome.
great.
Awesome. So let's start off, guys. Greg, Huey, George. First of all, what is DeFi? Huey, you want to take that?
Sure. So in one sentence, I would say DeFi is access to financial products without a trusted third party. What does that actually mean? So basically, everything that you can do in the real world, getting loans, changing from one currency to another, all these different things without having someone else in the middle facilitating it.
And George, like in one sentence, what's the difference between osmosis and something like Coinbase?
Well, Osmosis is run by the community and by a set of validators, which is Coinbase, as Greg was saying, a closed source system that has had plenty of problems. I don't think we need to go into those.
So then, Greg, that said, is something like Coinbase really DeFi?
No, Coinbase is not DeFi. It's not. Coinbase is not DeFi. Voyager is not DeFi. Celsius is not DeFi. They are centralized systems. They are, they may try to take advantage of the DeFi boom and try to, play into the narrative, but it's not DeFi.
In the news lately, we've seen a lot about these centralized exchanges failings, and like George said, yeah, there's a lot there. And then just yesterday, we had more hacks. And what are your guys' view on that long term? Is this a seismic issue that's going to continue? How do we solve that in a decentralized world? Like, what's the outlook here?
Right. So if you look at it's kind of everything, this whole like narrative building has a tendency to club everything into like one like category, right? So when we talk about like, hey, the systemic failure of Voyager and Celsius and 3AC, which are essentially like finance companies that are supposed to be regulated, that was not regulated. These are centralized companies, right? Failing, and the fact that the Web3 and the DeFi gets the blame is just ridiculous, because if you look at it, only thing that withstood the debacle and the entire collapse, institutional collapse, is DeFi. DeFi stood really well. Aave didn't collapse. None of the protocols that the CeFi, the Voyagers, and the Celsiuses were using collapsed. In fact, when they have to go file bankruptcy and restructuring, they have to pay back the DeFi loans they took first, because without that, the collateral wouldn't be released, right? So it's amazing to see DeFi actually standing ground where CeFi failed, or centralized finance failed, right? I think people that are going, people that believe in this decentralized world are going to stick. The tourists are going to leave, and it's just going to get better and better and better. Um, and unfortunately, people are going to lose money, and that's sadly market way of correcting things. And we're going to see insecure bridges, like Nomad. The bridges have to burn. right? I mean, there's really no other. Bridges are insecure. This has been a war cry from a long time we've been talking about, and I think that's where IBC is going to take the center stage when bridges are going to fail. And there's no saying what new vulnerabilities are going to come in, but you know, the way to succeed in this new wild world is to make sure you're well diversified in terms of your secured signature, all that good stuff. So, um, you're well spread across, your risk is highly well managed and all that good stuff. But yes, we're going to see some exploits before we can see success.
And Huey, I know this is kind of your jam. Do you have anything to add to that, or did Greg kind of cover it mostly?
No, I mean, I think Greg touched on it great. I think the thing here is, those Celsius Voyager 3AC, like that's, people deposited their money into those under the guise that it's DeFi. It's, because you put your money, when you put your money into, like a protocol like Aave or Compound, you're staking in something like it for a lending protocol, right? You put in ETH so that you can pull out USDC or other stable coin, and there's yield to be had on it, or you can go use that for different other opportunities. But when they're putting money into Celsius, and it's like, I'm making numbers up, and it's like, oh, you're getting 15% back on ETH. It's like, well, where is that happening? So it just, when you don't really question where the yield is coming from, I think you can go down a bad path, and I think that's what happened, because they're just being really risky, and caught up with them. But DeFi held up great.
Yeah, and this is a classic example of a closed source system failing over an open source system. Right? DeFi is open source. When you put your money in there, you know exactly where the money is being spent on. We realized the Voyagers and the Celsius are essentially banks. I mean, they took the deposits and invested in heavily risky assets with leverage, right? They played around with fire
They
and
just
got burned.
Celsius just took everybody's money and then gave it to Suzu, and he just spent it on yachts and
Yeah,
and 50 times leverage and blah blah blah, and it all
and
blew up.
nobody knew that, right? I mean, that's because a
Yeah,
closed source system. Just because you have juicy yields doesn't mean it's safe. And just I think that people are going to realize that. And people are going to realize the importance of open source systems, and people are going to realize the importance of DeFi. I think DeFi is going to get very, very strong. I'm super bullish actually looking at all this. And DeFi withstood without regulation. The CeFi needed regulation. Where is the SEC and where is, where is FBI and the DOJ when we needed protection from these Celsiuses and the Voyagers of the world, right? Like SEC is going busy after like super busy with enforcing through regulation through enforcement instead of adding clarity, but they left Voyagers and the and the Celsiuses a free ride. I think that has to stop, right? We need regulation. We need regulation to protect people from these quasi banks and not from DeFi. DeFi is doing very well in terms of protecting its users.
So, Greg and everyone here, Huey, George, what is your position on Web3 projects and teams, platforms, validators preaching Web3 while running on Web2 infrastructure? I mean, is this a form of hypocrisy, or what's the importance of leading by example here?
Well, so I'm gonna speak to this from somebody who's running on both Web 2 and Web 3. At the moment, we can't do everything in the Web 3 world, even if we wanted to. So it's not a matter of being hypocritical. It's just a matter of the tech stack hasn't caught up to what our ambitions are, right? So Web 2 is sort of a stepping stone. We are actively researching and working on how to move everything that we do on chain, most likely as our own layer 1 network. That being said, being able to use both Web 3 and Web 2 gives you a ton of flexibility and allows you to have the best of both worlds.
Yeah, so I mean, I understand the capabilities issue, right? I mean, we can get into details as to how, but I think where my concern is not using Web 2 classic infrastructure. I think over reliance on a single host, right? I mean, if you were to use cloud infrastructure, I'd rather prefer putting your infrastructure in a bare metal server, sitting in a secure data center that you have complete control over, and not Amazon. I mean, I just think, using Amazon is for a Web3 project is just fundamentally wrong. It's over concentration of power.
Sure.
You can do pretty much anything you want to do on an Amazon, right? And that's where Akash comes into play, because Akash is not really a cloud, it's a market, right? If you're using Akash, you're actually deploying on a Equinix or a OVH or someone's home service you choose to. But the point is, it's not really a single provider, but rather you're going to a bunch of bare metal providers, right? Granted, Akash is hard to use. There may be concerns about security, which can be addressed with a conversation really with me or with people, so I can show you under the hood what's happening. I think but again, I understand infrastructure usage is climbing the credibility ladder. So more people use Akash and more people get comfortable using Akash. I think it's going to reveal themselves. Fortunately, we don't have had any security events so far, and I want to keep it that way. I think Akash in itself has a much more secure design than Amazon's, being open, being hyper sort of like focused on selecting the best infrastructures, and also like not automating a lot of things that people expect, but rather giving the flexibility to the developer to choose a security architecture that please. So like with remote signers we have for validators, right? When I ask you to run validators on Akash, I'm expecting you to have remote signers somewhere else. So your security footprint is significantly lower where you can run the validators in a zero trust environment, right? So by choosing Akash, you're forced to make these trade-offs to be more secure. And that inherently makes the application more secure, right? So we're not promising all these bells and whistles. People promise the more things protocols provide, the more attack vectors there is, generally speaking. Right? So, but I think yes, I feel like using Amazon is a hypocritical element for any Web3 project, period, right? I think Web3 projects should not use Amazon. I'm not saying use Akash per se, but they should not use Amazon. You can use anything else.
Sure. No, and I get that, and I think a part of me agrees with you that it is a little bit hypocritical. And then I look at some of these monitoring dashboards that show where these validators are hosted, and it's like you said, 40-60% of the validators or nodes are hosted at AWS. But like at the same time, you have I'm sure you know this. There's a million things to be done. There's a million people to talk to. There's a million stacks to figure out, and AWS is just easy. I've worked with AWS probably for 15 years, and it's easy to prototype something on AWS and then figure out how to decentralize it and move it into the Web3 world.
Yeah, I understand. So the value of choosing iteration speed over principles, I totally understand. As a startup, you got to focus on iteration. You got to focus on increasing productivity, and Amazon is a great way to start off, right? I totally know you, especially if your team and people that usually come into infrastructure have some experience with Amazon, right? Yeah, so yeah, and that also puts the onus on teams like Akash to make it much better. But what I can tell you is, I think we're building things that we're building right now. Our heavy emphasis is on user focus, on user experience in general. The thing we're building, a lot of my code is open source. I code a lot, but if you look at some of the repos we have, it's a single command deploys, right? From your vanilla repos to getting highly productive and into production within a single command on Akash, which is significantly better than Amazon. In fact, even better than like Vercel or the Netlify. So it's a lot of work that's happening on Akash that improves your user experience and takes you to the next level. I think. And really shows you the power of non-custodial systems, how beautiful they can be, right? I'm very excited actually.
Awesome. With that, guys, let's open it up to any questions for Greg, Huey, or George. And Greg, I know we already have some questions that have come in both on Twitter and Telegram.
Right. So the question, okay, so there are a few questions that came on Twitter and Telegram. Is there an ETA on take fees will be implemented? So I talked about take income before, and I talked about the current regulatory, regulation enforcement mechanism. Unfortunately, the take income could be considered as a security, right? I mean, this is again in a regulatory gray hole. Not every take income, not every asset that gives take income is a security, like Ethereum. Ethereum, you stake your tokens and you get a percentage of the transaction fees, which is considered take income, right? So what Akash's proposed take income is not very different from Ethereum's proposed take income. So again, like we're waiting for a little more clarity from regulators to have an idea, right? And we are looking at creative ways to sort of like not classify Akash as security. So and it's just a really crazy environment in the US right now for anything that promises profits of some sorts, right? Like, so I think Akash is getting to a point where it's getting very decentralized. So if that capability comes from a community instead of Overclock Labs team, I think it'll be better. So we're working towards how we can enable that. The technical feature is not that complicated, right? It's taking percentage of hosting fees and giving back to stakers. It's not a complicated piece of software to implement. But from a regulation standpoint, it's very unclear. Second question, do you know how actually the value will be transferred from pool to the holders? Pool? I don't understand what pool is here.
I think he's talking about the take income pool.
Oh, so I just answer the question.
Yeah.
Does the protocol have a treasury? If so, which assets does it? Yeah, Akash has a treasury. Sorry, the protocol doesn't have a treasury. I mean, the Overclock Labs, which is the company behind Akash Network, definitely, and the foundation, the Decentralized Cloud Foundation, has a treasury of Akash tokens, and we have several other tokens that we have positions in. I don't know why you're concerned about what assets it contains, but the treasury will support Akash development over the next. I mean, we have cash to support Akash development over the next 3 to 4 years. So, if that's the reason for that question. Yeah.
Oh, as I say, let's switch over to new Web3, who is here on the call and has a question for us for a moment.
Yeah, so I got a couple of questions for Greg. So in general, Greg, do you see a need of tokenomics review for Akash? The reason for this question is if you look at especially the price chart and how Akash has trended with emissions and token unlocks, do you see a need of maybe revamping tokenomics? The second question I picked up from the conversation today is you mentioned, probably Phantom is a closed source, not an open source. Is Kepler safe enough? Is Kepler also a closed source? Because our Akash is sitting on Kepler and stake with some validators. So just want to understand your viewpoint on that.
Good
Thanks.
question. Okay, tokenomics. Right. We do absolutely. So does Akash token economics do need a ramp up? Absolutely. The first requirement, first big change we have working, in fact, we have a model and we're working towards implementing the model, is stable settlement. So settling in AKT is not very practical because AKT is a volatile asset, especially if you're looking for long-term hosting, right? And to get into that, today I say I'm hosting a website and I want to host a website for a year on Akash, right? So today Akash price is like say $1, right? And the provider and the payer agrees we're going to do 10 AKT, that's about $10 for this whole period. And tomorrow Akash price drops to 50 cents. Because the provider now is losing money, right? It's not great. And vice versa. Akash goes to $2, now the tenant is losing money, right? So we need to have some sort of a stable settlement mechanism, whether that comes in a stable coin or any other mechanism design. That is what we are exploring. If you introduce a new coin, obviously we have depegging issues. So the new coin will be burn and mint. We looked at helium really seriously. We feel like it's risky to do a second token. So we're going to keep AKT, but we're going to use implement stable mechanism using dynamic pricing. So that big change is coming very soon. I would expect at least in the next 3 to 4 months, right? So second point we're exploring very deeply is potentially provider incentives, right? So today providers are, it's amazing. We have no incentives for providers. Without incentives, people, there are about 50 providers, right? All providing, you know, uh, all providing compute. Some of them are profitable in their own ways. Some of them are not. And we want to ensure and we have churn. We have people leaving, Akash providers because they're not making money, because Akash doesn't provide incentives additional to whatever they're earning, right, directly. So I think having some sort of relief for these providers is essential for us to build a massive network. So we're starting to experiment with early provider incentives. So even if your utilization is low, you can get paid for staying online. And that gives us an opportunity to focus on tenants, which is demand, which is much harder than providers today. So we can be hyper focused, and we can actually, as we increase the demand, the incentives can go lower, right? So these two big changes are coming to Akash economics very soon. Stay tuned on these new updates. When it comes to wallet security, is Kepler secure versus not secure? Now it's closed source, so I would, give it the same treatment as a closed source software. And what I can tell you is, if you move your funds in from a hot wallet to a cold wallet, it's a lot more secure. Now, AKT on Kepler is a lot more secure than your normal bridges or any of the Ethereum place, because, if you look at all the hacks that happened so far, a majority of the hacks exploits like happen because, you know the the attacker was able to successfully execute malicious code on the blockchain. Now, Akash doesn't have that capability. Akash doesn't do smart contracts. So the chances of someone executing a malicious code on Akash itself is, not, it's zero, right? Which is great. So you're not going to have the risk. And second, supply chain attack. Can someone introduce a bad library into Kepler and steal your funds? Possible. So if you keep your funds on Kepler, that means in a hot wallet, your funds are at risk. So please move all your funds from a hot wallet to a cold wallet. That means use Ledger and you're fine, right? And third attack vector I would see is we have OddZ, which is great. I want to start seeing. And so far, the implementation for OddZ is um, it's OddZ has been just restake, right? Withdraw staking rewards and restake them, which is relatively safe. But I don't know if you could very well have an OddZ where you withdraw all your money, So be very careful on authorizations when that gives you like full withdrawal of all your cash, like Yieldmos here and George here was talking about, like, hey, you should have like a clear limit, right? And Ethereum is notoriously bad for this sort of like exploits, right? Ethereum is notoriously like, when Ethereum dApps, DeFi products built on them, when they ask your authorization, they'll be like, hey, we want to withdraw all your money. And once you authorize that, and if that, authorization is malicious, you're screwed, right? You lose your money. So be very careful. I think I like the authz implementation, but the wallets inherently don't support WotC, right? So authz,
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to add that Kaku, who's with us here today, actually did a bunch of work on Kepler to where all of the OFC grants now actually show up in human readable format about 6 weeks ago. So
Oh, wow.
that's mitigated, but you still have, like you were saying, you still have to be careful and make sure that you only grant the permissions that you're comfortable with granting.
It comes down to the user errors, right? That you got to watch out for. So those three are the attack vectors I can think about. But yes, I would love to see Kepler open source. I mean, I've been talking to the folks at Kepler, but I'm not too sure what the plans are.
It's partially open source,
Kepler?
right? Yeah, because we were able to submit a PR and they took it, right?
Wait, let me check.
What's that?
I haven't caught up with their source code recently, but let me check.
I think they encrypt. They keep like their endpoints and some of their like API keys to themselves, but a good chunk of it is open.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay.
And then here on Twitter, we had a question about where can we find a list of Akash Accelerator projects to delegate tokens to if they have a validator?
Let's see. Good question. I think our blog, our forum.akash.network, and there is an accelerator page somewhere there. But that brings to another very important point. I think we should do a better job in communicating what the accelerator projects are and what the progress is on. That's a good
On the
yeah.
Akash under the developer side, the Akash Accelerator, if you go on there under featured startups, it shows a few.
We're
So
on the forum.
so if you go to the Akash website under developers and then Akash Accelerator, and then scroll down, then you can see some of the featured startups.
That's awesome. So I go to under developers. Okay, I got it. Oh yeah, there's a whole new page I didn't realize we have. Awesome. So I see pen registry, Praetor, Akash Lyrics there. That's cool.
And then one last question about proposals. This person said they voted yes on proposals 21 and 15, each almost having the inflation. And they said recently a trade-off was suggested, coding in an APR boost for holders. Stakes, is that still a plan? Trade-off was suggested, coding in an APR boost for holders.
APR boost. Okay. And there was no plan of APR boost. I mean, I don't think we said we can consider dropping some of the tokens. I mean, we're still considering. It's not a plan. It was a proposal. We cut the inflation. That was the best thing to do. Again, like I don't like to discuss prices here, but if you look at price performance for Akash, it's been really good over the last I would say like 45 days. We did a 100%, in price, and I think that a lot of that is a good portion of that is because we cut the inflation to lower so that lowers the sell pressure on the market, right? So and if as long as we keep delivering what we say we're going to deliver, if we keep getting our adoption well, and we keep communicating about what we're doing, I think the price will stay. So the better boost is a better price than a free tokens, because what we're realizing is when we give free tokens, people sell that on market, especially in a bear market, and that's going to impact the price a lot. It's very important for us to hold these levels. So when the bull market comes, we're going to build upon the levels we hold, right? So we got to be very careful on how we distribute these tokens, and we got to be extremely careful on distributing the tokens to the wrong people, right? So we will be, we're going to make some proposals on how to provide incentives. I think the initial incentives are going to come from Overclock's treasury itself. It's not going to be on the protocol, because we want to experiment, we want to learn on how these incentives are, on the success of the incentives, like we did with CAB. But once we can prove and have enough data to be able to, you know, to have justification to do a more on-chain spend, we'll be able to do that. So I don't think there's AP, quoting an APR boost. I don't know. Yeah, I did ask a question if people wanted, on Twitter, and overwhelmingly people said yes, reduce the inflation as much as possible, and we did that and worked out really well.
Awesome. Well, that's about all the time we have today, unless you have anything else, Greg. Anything else before we jump into saying goodbye and all that?
Yeah, so I think we're seeing a lot of good work done by our insiders and our vanguards, right? This is our community program that we have. I highly, if you want to get involved in our community, please go to akash.network/community. Please apply there, become an insider. This is the time we need your help. There's a lot happening at Akash. Every week I'm here talking to you every Wednesday, right? Giving you the updates. I'd love for you to participate, in a more closed setting. So please go check out our community. And also, if we're hiring, we need people, engineering and marketing folks. So go to akash.network/careers. And if you know anybody, please refer me.
Thanks so much to George, Huey, and Greg for joining us on Spaces today. And a huge thank you to all of you for joining today or listening to this later. Before we get together next time, and like Greg said, find out how you can spread the word about Akash and help us grow by becoming an Akash insider, akash.network/community. Thank you guys so much for joining today's event. Thanks again, Greg, George, and Huey for spending time with us. See you guys next Wednesday with Greg at 8 a.m.